Hello and welcome to HorsePlayer Happy Hour. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, back with you from the Brentwood in Saratoga Springs. Fantastic bar and hotel right here across from the 7 Furlong Chute. Taking this happy hour thing seriously day. Unusual call going with the Bloody Mary for reasons I'm sure we'll discuss a little bit later in the show. Joined as ever from an undisclosed location in Massachusetts. He is TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, how are things?
Good, Pete. Looking forward to a nice day of racing up at Saratoga and getting ready for the big weekend on Saturday with the Whitney and 2 other grade ones. We'll dive into those in a little bit, but so far so good. I think we've got some good weather and some good racing here for this late pick 4 this afternoon.
There you go. And I talked about my unusual choice of beverage. It's been a celebratory week in these parts as it is in your parts, as some folks may or may not know. We are nearly birthday buddies, you and me. You're the August 3rd. I'm the August 4th. We went out for a minute last night, and it was one of those things where there was a bunch of things. A wine list that wasn't doing anything for me led to probably about 3 too many cocktails before we hit the wall, and then we went home and drank whiskey. So it's 4:15 in the afternoon, and I still need a little pick-me-up. It comes in the form of this delicious Bloody Mary, there's many specialties of the house here at the Brentwood, but I particularly like this Bloody, especially since it's made with booze from our friends at Albany Distilling Company, who do the In the Money whiskey, the proceeds of which are fully going to charity. We got the Albany Distilling Company vodka. We've got the Toma Bloody Mary mix, and we're headed back. My form line, which was a little in and out looking, is now headed back up in the right direction. You drinking anything good over there?
Nothing particularly fancy right here. This is your run-of-the-mill light beer in this can. But the past few days, we've had a good time. We've gotten after it a little bit. And hey, look, I know some health folks would probably disagree, but a little hair of the dog never hurt anyone. If you need to just kind of get things flowing again.
Sometimes that one, it is not going to be a heavy drinking day, but a little bit of the hair of the dog will do just the trick. And I may have to chase it with a beer. You mentioned light beer. I've been digging that Dick Murphy light beer from our friends over at Walton Whitman Brewing Company right here in Saratoga Springs. Might have to crack one of those. We'll see how we feel as the show goes on. But we got to set the scene here. Our first contest race is going to be coming up in, we probably have 15 minutes or so. So we can really set the scene. For folks that don't know what HorsePlayer Happy Hour is, I think we'll describe it. And I usually dive right into my whole spiel. Today, Matt, I'm going to blindside you and ask you to, I'll pick up the ball and run with it at some point. But tell folks what we're doing here on this live stream.
This is all to benefit charity. TRF, TAA, help the horses after their job on the track is all said and done. If we're going to try and do our part here, it's easy. It's a $20 entry fee to this contest. The VIG, the juice, goes to Aftercare, taking care of all of the horses that are out there. The contest itself, today, it's all Saratoga. The entire card, we talked about it, and we'll dive into it some more. And we need some feedback from all of you listening and watching in the comment section. But the gist is, top 2 people, you automatically qualify for what we call the postseason. Those of you who finish in the top 10, you will accrue points that throughout the course of the regular season, your top, 8 scores, I believe, will go toward your overall total. The person at the end of the regular season who has the most points will win themselves a full $10,000 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. And if you get into the postseason, we will do a little bit of a whittling down effect over the course of a few weeks. And if you're the person who is on top at the very end of it, you also will win a $10,000 BCBC seat. That's not to forget the fact that you can finish in the top 10% of this week's contest today, and you qualify for the Saturday BCBC qualifier coming up here on horseplayers.com. So there's plenty of reasons to get involved this week. All things considered, we ended up coming in a little bit late with our publicity and trying to pump the tires a little bit, but we still got up over 150 entrants. And I feel like that's our floor right now. I know we can go more than that. I know we can kind of spread out some more. And as you've said, I know it's a little counterintuitive to sit there and say, invite your friends, tell everybody else about it, because inherently perhaps your chances minimize a little bit, but at the same time, knowing that it all goes to a good cause at the end of the day. And you're putting yourself in a position to really take advantage of what I think we've sort of deemed, and I think rightfully so, one of the best sort of EV kind of plays, if you will, throughout the course of the entire tournament season with this format.
$20,000 essentially added to the pot at no extra cost to players in the form of those 2 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seats, one that'll go to the winner and one to the winner of those playoffs, as you described. $20 to play, all proceeds to charity. What's not to like? I mean, I feel like we squared the circle in coming up with this contest format, and obviously too late to get into this week's game since we did this full card Saratoga thing, but there will be opportunities throughout the rest of the meet. I definitely like the all Saratoga format. One thing I'd love to hear from people in the comments, I noticed on Horse Tourneys, on HorsePlayers, there are a lot of other contests that go from race 3 to 10 at Saratoga. We went from race 1 to 10. What's your preference out there in the world? Which one would be better? I mean, from a hustling entries point of view, maybe it makes sense to go with the shorter one. I kind of liked something about having the full card, and I know those races were both won by favorites today, but I think that's a skill that should be rewarded too in contests sometimes, to be able to take a look and pick a shorter price runner like we saw in those early races today.
Well, it's a double-edged sword, too. I agree with you. I like the idea of the full card. But then again, also from our standpoint of, let's say we're trying to hustle some entries, that buys us about another hour or so's worth of time. So if you haven't done all the work on the full card and all of a sudden you see it at the last second, well, it's 2 less races that you need to go over. So I do see both sides of the coin. I thought all things considered, today was pretty good. Maybe next week we try to go with the 3 through 10 or whatever the numbers may be, and then kind of go back and forth. But as you alluded to, it's all really up to the folks who play in this thing week in and week out. What do you prefer? Because we'll fall in line.
And just mentioning that idea of interaction with the audience and doing what the audience wants reminds me that we want to hear from you in the comments, and we're already hearing from some folks out there.
I respect that.
Including Blinkers Off 420, who says, do the pick and pray full card, go play a round of golf. I'll tell you what, you might, if we do the full card, you might be able to, you could get 9 in and then still show up in time for the live stream. So, I mean, that really could work. We've got some great, we'll get to everybody here. At least, we love to give shout outs. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear who you like in these various races. So we'll say hello to Everett. We'll say hello to Steve, who passes along birthday wishes. I'm sure those are extended to you as well, Matt. And then Chess Morgan says, Butterloo. This was the race that was happening as I was walking over, so I didn't actually see this race. You cannot drop Lou's reins at the finish. Exactly what happened to 8 Bells. Oof, they fall apart in their front end and crash. Was there an accident in this race?
I to be honest, I have not really been watching the card today. I started... I'm now helping out with NBC's coverage of the Premier League. So I've been all in on soccer. Yeah, all throughout this morning. We had a podcast. And then I've been trying to get ready for these races while also looking ahead to the weekend. So I haven't been watching live today. So that comment right there, I'm curious. I'd be interested to see what happened.
Yeah, I'm hearing in the comments there was an issue on the Gallop out. Oh, my God. That's unfortunate. Well, hopefully we'll get a positive update of some stripe there, but it doesn't sound like it was good for Butterloo, unfortunately. And I don't know enough about horsemanship or riding for the specifics, but that if it was a preventable thing, that's something that needs to be more publicized amongst riders, so we can avoid what's obviously the absolute worst aspect of the game when we have to deal with situations like that. But anyway, we'll more to come on that front, and sorry for being out of the loop. So the Premier League, tell us what your role is going to be. What are you going to be doing? What an amazing gig.
Yeah, we haven't finalized anything as far as like written down what it actually looks like, but in the big picture this morning we were looking at some futures, knowing that next Friday is the beginning of the season. So just talking about perhaps maybe some value if you're trying to go against the grain a little bit, recognizing that, a couple of the plays that we were kind of laying out, the idea of the top 4, there's a reason that they're the top 4 almost year in and year out. And that 4th slot more or less kind of swaps between a couple of different squads. But, there's a reason that Manchester City is as heavy a favorite as they are year in and year out. They're always there. Even when Liverpool won their title a couple of years ago, Man City was right there all the way all through. And I think it ended up being like a 10-point gap. But I mean, big picture, there's a reason that those 4 teams typically are where they are. But you can get a little bit more creative. You can look and play sort of top 6 positions as far as the table is concerned at the end of the season. You can look to see who's going to get relegated and play in the bottom 3. So a few different ways to go. I threw out I think a player that he's exceptional from a striker standpoint, Dominic Calvert-Lewin at Everton. The problem is, and my big thing that I kind of pointed out, his odds are great at 25-1. You understand why Harry Kane and Mo Salah are at the top of the market for obvious reasons. But most of those folks at the top of the market, they are their team's penalty taker. And Calvert-Lewin is not, which is, I think, inherently going to hurt his chances just in general. But if you took away the PKs from some of those top guys, he's right there in and amongst them. And he's only 24 years old. From a shots on target percentage, he's one of the best. He's one of the most accurate. I think he only trailed Harry Kane last year. So I think it's one of those things that at 25-1, I thought he was worth a bit of a look. And now with the news this afternoon about the whole debacle with Barcelona and Messi, I have no idea what the rest of this is going to look like. I found it fascinating, not to totally go off on a tangent. The fourth best odds as far as a team or an area for him to end up now, behind PSG, Man City, and one other squad, I don't remember who it was. Oh, Barcelona, staying at Barcelona, is an MLS team.
That would be something. It seems like we might be a little early in the career to see that particular move.
It was my thought that it's a little early, but at the same time, knowing that Beckham has his team down in Miami, LA has always been able to kind of pull the guys over from Europe. But to your point, I still feel like there's a lot of gas left in that tank. I'd be surprised if he was here this early, but crazier things have happened. Yeah,
it feels like he'd be worth more playing in the best leagues in the world as opposed to the I mean, MLS is cool. I enjoy it very much. But anyway, let's talk about this race in Saratoga. We're going to come back and talk soccer, if only because I wanted to ask you if you've seen Ted Lasso. But we'll come back to that. Let us know in the comments if you've seen Ted Lasso and what you think of it. I just finished the first season of that. We got 2 minutes at Saratoga. We can pop that up on screen, AJ, at this point, if you are game to do so. We're looking at this pick four. Let's talk a little bit of pick four. Matt, if you're playing, I was going to throw in a ticket. I thought it'd be fun to play along with what we've got going on here, and very curious to get your thoughts on this race.
Yeah, so this was a race that I felt like you could have spread very deep if you are playing the pick. I chose not to because I didn't want to spend that much with this first leg. The horse that I'm going to land on, though, I don't know if I love the price, but I just thought the number 5, Mr. Kringle, in the big picture, given the trip in that most recent run, was really bottled up until the final 1/8 of a mile. And yes, there was a seam that opened up, and no, he didn't really kick on through, but I think his figs stack up well. This is also going to be second-time blinkers, which is kind of a sneaky angle. I think everyone looks at first time. Second time, I think, can be just as valuable. He's taken some money in here as well. So Mr. Kringle was where I landed, but boy, I'll tell you what, there were a number of horses in here that I thought were interesting that you could make cases for at decent prices.
I tend to agree. It's funny, though, I did, while seeing it similarly to you, come up with the same horse on top. I felt that maybe we were seeing some hidden improvement last time for Mr. Kringle with more early pace on, despite the rider not really asking for pace either. So yes. What about Lescano letting Mr. Kringle use a little bit more natural speed? Maybe he'll have some more juice at the finish, just with a more comfortable run through. And then I was going to use Land Biscuit, the 7. I like to see a maiden special weight winner coming to these starter allowance races. There can be some interesting little class angles sometimes that I don't think everybody always pays attention to. Little caveat, it was an off the turf maiden special weight, so not like some proper maiden special weight, but it's still, the horse fits well on that and the previous turf race. I just thought was a must use. And then I was going to run a few backup lines through the 9 here in this race as well, and just try to get out with the 5 and the 7 as A's and the 9 as a B. You were how many numbers were you going to use in total?
Oh boy, I mean, so I'm looking right now at one of my other monitors. I mean, truth be told, I have 8 horses that are within 2 points of each other on a certain performance number. So you could really go super deep if you were going to. I would strongly encourage you to kind of tier it a little bit and put many of your eggs into the basket of the horses that you most like compared to some of the others. But the 5 and the 7 would have been my top 2 in there. I thought Lord Flincher was a little bit interesting down on the inside at 22-1. I don't know if he's quite good enough right now, but boy, it was a pretty significant jump up first time going out for the second time for the new connections. So 22-1, I don't think is a wild number. And I would certainly hate to not have the horse on some sort of a ticket if he were to come in and blow things up here in the first leg, especially if you like some stuff down the line.
Blinkers off, who I think his name is Mike. Mike, I'm right about that, right? Puts up the 3. First time against winners. little slower, but a B plus work and a pleasing 8-1 price. I wouldn't talk you off.
Well, and the runner up as well from that most recent start, the career debut, which he won, came back and earned a 75 buyer in the next start. So the form, you could even make a case if you want to use that, and it's not always a perfect way of looking at things, but if the runner-up came back and earned a 75 and this horse earned a 67 in the debut, maybe you could at the very least get up into that mid-70 range. And if that's the case, he's right there.
I think that sounds very plausible, and I'm tempted to throw in one little beeline on the horse. Let us know out there who you're playing in this race. We'd love to hear from you. Answer your questions. Tell us who you like in this sequence. After this race, we'll take a look at the leaderboard. We'll keep asking your questions and trying to interact with the audience as much as possible. But then we can also do a little bit of previewing of some of the Grade 1 action on Saturday here at Saratoga. We've got those 3 big Grade 1 races, major Breeders' Cup implications as well. One thing we didn't talk about that much in our preamble is how great the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge is, to many, the number one most prestigious contest that there is out there. And obviously, all along the way here, we're going to plan to be following the key races that are going to yield the top contenders for the Breeders' Cup, which is obviously, one of the really, for me, the main focus of the racing year, with no disrespect to Saratoga or the Triple Crown races. But so much of my racing year is tied up in that event from both a betting point of view and, of course, a fan point of view. So we've got a 39-1 shot out here, absolutely winging on the lead, 23-2 for that opening quarter. So you would surely think that this is unsustainably fast, but jockeys in the back of the pack have at least a little bit of something to think about here, Matt.
Yeah, and with the way that the inner turf, and I think that's something else that we could talk about throughout the afternoon, the inner turf, it's not like you've had one style that's really been dominant, especially with speed. So I would like to think at some point the horse is going to stop, but boy, this is a massive lead for starter allowance types.
Yeah, 47-1 it looks like for that second quarter, and it feels like the pack is beginning to come here. But theft on the mind of number 4 in
change
the
leads,
spot.
Kringle, and go get him.
Oh my goodness!
Nope.
Oh no, the horse hit the guardrail.
Hey, bumped off the temporary rail.
Yeah, I don't like the here's Mr. Kringle. I don't like that the jock had to dodge all those horses, but hopefully okay. The horse certainly looks okay.
But now, again, hope that the rider, I believe, was listed as Vargas. Hopefully the rider is okay, but that's why you have a temporary rail. Yep. Where that could have been much worse if that was something that's not going to give like that, and just that one. And honestly, I think that's a credit to for that one piece of fencing to come down and not multiple parts. And I know he just kind of bumped off the side of it, but I mean, we've seen some disasters with that sort of stuff in the past. So hopefully everything's going to be okay. But an eventful way to start the Happy.
Yeah, it looked like an amazing job but hopefully by rider and equines to avoid that being worse than it was. But that's got to be one of the scariest things that can happen to you as a rider, that being prone and hearing those hoof beats all around you. And somebody says he might have caught some foot, but hopefully
we'll wait and see. Yeah,
we'll see what happens. It didn't look great. We'll tell you that much. Certainly takes the joy out of any win here when you see that and get reminded that jockeys, and I'm not saying we shouldn't criticize them at all. I think that talking about rides and that is part of being a fan, and if we want to be a serious sport, we have to leave ourselves open to it. But at the same time, we try to do so with empathy and an understanding that it is the one job where an ambulance follows you around when you're at work, and you got to have some sympathy for that.
Yeah. Again, I mean, I've said it many times. I'm not nearly brave enough to do what these men and women do on a day-to-day basis. So, but to your point, also, they're just because you objectively analyze the way things go, it's the same with some of these horses. When we talk about them, we go, look, the horse isn't cut out to be anything much more than a 20 claimer. I don't have anything personal against the horse. I'm just doing my job. I'm calling him spade a spade. He's not going to win a Breeders' Cup. So, it is what it is. And again, let's just knock on wood, hope that the rider is okay. The horse was galloping out in and amongst, and they're going to show the steward's cams up right now. I mean, he seemed to sit up on his knees.
Yeah, he sat up. Yeah,
shortly after,
walked away on his own. Says Joe Salito.
And you still, I'm sure they're going to make sure that he's all right. Going to give him a thorough look over. The horse galloped out as well with the rest of the field. So knock on wood, everything is okay there as well with spectatorless, who was riderless at the very end of the race. But yeah, so again, good news to see him get up on his own and walk over toward everyone. But the medical crew will do their job and give him a good look over. And I'm sure they'll check and make sure everything is okay as far as concussion and things like that. So
I'm definitely feeling optimistic enough to return to my silly question I was asking you about before. Ted Lasso, have you seen it?
I'm familiar with Ted Lasso with Jason Sudeikis. I've never seen it though.
Especially if you're doing you're working on Premier League stuff, just for the cultural references alone, I would predict that you and anybody out there, I don't think you even have to be a soccer / world football, whatever you want to call it, fan. It's just it's a show with a lot of heart, and it's really, really funny. And there's also, I was chatting with JK about it last night at dinner, simply because of the idea of, I don't think he's meant to be from Texas, but there's a lot of football. There's just a lot of funny, like American football.
A lot of Americanisms, yeah.
Yeah, and just the culture. It's just such a perfect, culture shock. There's a little bit of, this is one that will predate you by a long way, Matt, but maybe some of the listeners, the viewers will remember the show. That the Northern Exposure came to mind to me. A show that, classic fish. It's good. Classic fish out of water kind of deal that it reminded me a little bit of that. Anyway, it's a lot of fun. Let us know out there what you want us to be chatting about. Any questions you have, any thoughts on this next race. As soon as they go official here, I think we should take a look at the leaderboard, because we're pretty far along in this contest on a percentage basis at this point. Something a little different. We've been doing the six race, the 8 race to have a real 10 race contest. I'm sure some people are very excited about that. Others probably don't necessarily appreciate it, but for real, anybody's got to see that it definitely is a little bit more of a test, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you're not going to have just the well, I guess it goes a few different ways. I see the comment.
He's showing his age again. Yes, indeed.
I think this is in a very similar way to the way that we have positioned the year-long, the regular season piece of it. A longer contest, theoretically, you need to be better for more of them. Now, I get it. You can look at it the other way and say it just gives you more opportunities to find the bomb that blows everything up. I tend to look at it more and say, well, yes and no. You need to also dodge the bullets throughout the rest of the day. There are more opportunities for people to come and get you. Therefore, you need to be better over a longer period of time. You can look at it so many different ways. You can chop it up however your perspective is and your opinion is. You can make a case for it. But I like the full cards. I try to, when I get done with the work early enough. My problem is more and more time has gone by, unless it's something that needs to be planned for ahead of time. I like going through the races in the 25 minutes between races. When I'm here at my desk, I can pull up replays, I can do stuff on the fly, and I can really look at the tote and give it a good hard look and say, this horse is taking quite a bit of money and I didn't think they would, or vice versa. But a contest does force you to get the work done ahead of time. So, especially with the pick and pray. But you can look at this thing 15 different ways and come to any kind of conclusion you want. I think it's fun. It's Saratoga. I don't care how many races there are. It's a good time.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. And one of the nice things about contest play too is that ability to, for a fixed cost, get action all day long. If nothing else, we are providing that for folks today. Little bit of an update. Oh no, we did that one already, but there was another. Here it is. Here is the latest update from Joe Vargas out of the ambulance, walking back to Jock's room, guessing off the remaining mounts, which we'll keep an ear out for. But I mean, hey, we're going to take that as a best case scenario. It's so scary when you see a prone rider and all those 1,000-pound beasts in and among him. Now we're gonna put this shout out here so I don't forget it for later. Nice little shout out for the podcast. Question about the Whitney. We're gonna get there. We'll do that. Maybe we'll make that the first of the races we talk about. But before we do that, I want to take a look at this leaderboard and see who's up there this week. AJ, if you want to flash that onto the screen. And David Vogt, he's been doing terrific.
This is
that's the wrong leaderboard.
Wrong leaderboard.
That contest has finished. I see. I bet you. But that's interesting. At the top, it said HorsePlayer Happy Hour, but it was the wrong races.
I have it pulled up here. We've got the and again, I can't show off my screen right now, but Michael Domabil is the leader right now with 3 to go. Yeah, he's at 63.90.
He's been a rock in these contests, and he's been writing for us, writing up Colonial over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com.
He actually has 2 inside the top 10, but I'll give you just a quick verbal rundown of the top 10 right now. Michael Domabil with 63.90. Sean O'Malley second with 59. John Twomey, 58.70 in third. Ray DiCarlo, 52.90. Bill Chenvert, 51.30. Michael Robinson and Michael Domabil tied for sixth at 48.60. Todd Van Drien, eighth at 47.40. Dave Nichols at 44.60. And Matt Miller rounds out the top 10 at 42.50. Good news is still 3 races to go. And there are a few overlapping selections, but I'm seeing a lot of different colored squares. There we go. You can see it right there in front of you, which to me lends itself to these final 3 races. Things can get shaken up here pretty quick.
That's right. If you'll know at this point if you're blocked potentially from being in one of those top 2 slots, or whatever your goal is. Top 10 get tour points. It's going to be 14 today or 15? Did we say?
It's going to be 15.
Top 15 advance to Saturday's qualifier for the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, which, by the way, you can plunk down money and buy for yourself if you came late to the contest, or if it happens to not go your way today. That's obviously open and ready to rock and roll. But yeah, you can see based on who has what in front of you what your ceiling is essentially. Some of that's going to involve guesswork based on what prices the horses are and how many points are people are ahead of you in this current leaderboard. But all to play for is the phrase we like to use for this situation.
Not to take away from the leaderboard, knowing we still have some time left and we'll be able to check it again with only these 4 races that we'll go over. We'll have plenty of time to look at the leaderboard throughout, after each of the remaining races here. From a gambling standpoint, I had mentioned in that last race, that I thought Lord Flincher was an interesting one down on the inside, ended up running second at a big price. My question for you, I got the price that I wanted on Mr. Kringle. I wouldn't have gone any lower than that 7-2 that he ended up being. Should I have had something, whether it was place money and I didn't play an exacta, I'll be straightforward with that because I typically don't play exactas unless it's a live money contest. Should I have had something on Lord Flincher who paid $20.80 to place and 10 and change to show? Or do you just kind of stick to, what you really think is going to happen? And I got the price on the horse that probabilistically, is that the right way of putting it? He was a much more likely winner than Lord Flincher was. Should I have had anything on the one?
I think it comes down to what your specific opinion and your gambling style. For me, sometimes in that situation, if there's a horse that's a price like that, because once you get to a price like the Flincher was in the Lord Flincher was in the last race, you really do have a chance to get an overlay in your exotics, because those are horses, I feel like past a certain point, the computer money, those are the few horses the computers leave out in their betting to try to make back what's left of the takeout after their giant rebates. And then they're all about betting efficiently. But when you can include a horse that they X'd out, I think there's outsized value. Now, I haven't seen what this exacta paid, but I'm going to guess it paid a little bit more than what you might think it would have in a normal, completely efficient modern day exacta pool. What are we looking at?
Yeah, I mean, it paid $150 for 2.
Yeah,
but
that's good.
But I guess even on a much more basic standpoint and kind of tying it into contest play, in an event like this, if you thought going into it, you would get what you would deem a playable price on Mr. Kringle, which again, that was the limit for me. I wouldn't have gone any less than 7-2, but you knew you were probably going to have a horse in Lord Flincher who'd get lost in the shuffle. You don't think is as likely a winner though. I didn't think the horse would go off at 23-1 or whatever it ended up being. I thought you'd probably get 12, 13. So I guess I just struggle with the idea of should I have had something to, across the board at 20-1 just if nothing else, for the point of if he runs third, you're going to get your money back.
Yeah, I almost never bet across the board. What I would have maybe been inclined to do there is to have a little bit of an exacta as place bet. That's the way that I really like the exacta. It's not very often that I'm making an exacta because I just think these horses are going to run 1-2, and that's my opinion in the race. But when I have a price horse that I think can hit the board, to key that horse in second under contenders, and then to key that horse in third, contenders with key.
Yeah.
I love those bets because they cost very little money and they can pay a lot. Whereas the place is just, it's too grindy, and you get, you're paying a very high effective takeout, getting crushed by the breakage. There's just a lot of reasons why I personally, if we'd been talking it through, I think my main bet there probably would have been Kringle to win for all the reasons you said.
And that's all I did.
Yeah,
right.
You made a compelling case, and if I might have said to you, yeah, why not do a little da-da-da-da? Like it's. But again, if that's not how you usually approach the game, then it surely did nothing. I'm not going to say you did anything wrong, but it's exactly the kind of thing that we should be talking about on this show and on more shows, because it's that idea of hand histories in poker that we've talked about so many times. We don't really have that equivalent. We do on Redboard Rewind with Spencer Lugenbuehl. We have that whole show that does that type of thing, but there's not. Horse racing Twitter is not good at this because it so quickly turns into, oh, you're an idiot, you should have done that, which is not the spirit on many of these poker message boards where people just want to help people. So, maybe somebody then reads that and maybe they didn't know that concept of exacta as place, and then now maybe we've helped somebody out. That even if it's not applicable to you in this instance, just by talking through these different concepts, different tools in your bettor's toolbox, hopefully we make some better players.
And I don't know if the way that I approached my first BCBC, which happened to be the one that I did the best in of the three that I've played in, was the exact same way that Nick Tamaro approached that one, and he did very well that year as well. But kind of to the idea of you have some prices or whatever it may be, I more or less, there was one race that I crushed, and that was kind of was building around that. But in that race itself, I ended up taking two logical contenders along with my horse in first and second, and then some other prices in third, and then kind of just tiered the bigger numbers into the other slots. So effectively, you just kind of, you said these two or three have to run in the top three to have any chance, and then if we can catch a price, it's all going to work out. You're going to end up cashing a bunch of different things. I typically only do that in a contest format. I don't do that on a daily basis. I'm still much more inclined on a daily basis. It's kind of how I played last year's BCBC, was just trying to hook up doubles and just be alive to something else. And, probably a bit of a downfall of mine in that you're not maximizing the leverage that you may have in certain instances, like I did with that first BCBC. But, it is what it is. To your point, I think it's a way that perhaps some folks have never thought of approaching playing a trifecta, or even better, a superfecta, because it can add up so quickly. If you really love, or you can find a price or two that you can almost key your more likely contenders in your top slots and those bigger bombs underneath, and whittle away at the actual cost of what the ticket will be, that goes a long way.
There's some good thoughts here. MVP 548 mentions that in his experience across the board or each way, the win in the UK they'd say win place, but in our terms win show. Good thing to do when you have a horse over 15-1. I do love each way betting, and each way betting to me eliminates some of the problems of what I see the problems of place betting, where you get your price chiseled if the favorite comes in, and then, like I mentioned before, you're paying a high effective takeout because of the breakage. So typically over there, and anybody in the comments correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. So if it's an 8-runner or more field, you'll get a quarter the odds for your horse to finish in the top 3. And what's really interesting with those bets is when you have a big favorite who's likely to run in, that's going to push the win price out, and you'll get what can be known as a cheeky each way, or if you're a bookie, a dirty each way, because you're still calculating the quarter of that horse's odds even though their price to run in the top 3 is way lower than what it would be predicated off of the win, if you follow me. Now, you don't want to do this too often, or you're probably not going to be able to have people take your bets. You become persona non grata if all you're doing is a bunch of cheeky each way bets. But you see some tremendous opportunities with fixed odds betting and that. So something to think about a little bit. Then we had a question from Tom asking about the computer players leaving horses out. So, okay, this is really hypothetical. Okay, I don't know this happens. I don't know anybody. I know people who use computers to help them in their wagering, but I don't know anybody who has like a proper computer-assisted wagering team. But, just as a thought experiment, at one point, I tried to think about edges and think about what I would do to maximize my edge in these situations. I've even messed around with some like very baby versions of this with certain sequences. So if you have, I'll just get for a simple example, let's just use the double. Okay. So let's say there's a double and you have a few things in your favor. You're getting a big rebate like computer players are, and you will be able to efficiently weight your bets so you can really control what each combination is going to play. Something that you can do with a spreadsheet, something that certain ADWs give you tools to do, essentially using Dutch principles. So whether it's a big price and a favorite, or 2 big prices or 2 favorites in each of the 2 legs of the double, you're trying to get paid roughly the same thing. So if you're a computer player getting a big rebate, all you have to do, essentially, to make money is make bets that will lose less than the takeout. So you want to play something as close to all with all, weighted efficiently as possible. And just again, to oversimplify the example, maybe you hate the favorite in the first race, okay? So that you leave the favorite out. That's going to get you to a point where you're going to be able to get a return back greater than the takeout with factoring in your rebate. You could do this without a rebate, but you got to throw out a lot more horses. But anyway, I feel like that there's something like that. And the reason it came to me that's what I think is going on, just how efficient the pools are. It's not, it feels like the right combinations of money. You see what a lot of doubles pay, what a lot of pick threes pay, what a lot of pick fours pay. Compared to how it used to be, it feels like they all pay less than they should. And I think this type of efficiency, that level of betting, is what leads to that, with the exception of when there's, some crazy, sometimes you'll see a crazy horse that wasn't considered, in my example, by the computer, that will then trigger a bet, the rare better than it should have been payoff. So does that make any sense, Matt? I hope I didn't go too deep down the rabbit hole there.
No, well, and I guess to just try to bring it to the folks who don't get giant rebates and aren't the computer players, you brought up the Dutching principle, which is one that I don't think enough people are really sort of in tune with. And I mean, actually, I have in my little bar as part of my browser, I just have a Dutching. There's a website with a calculator, and you go in and you just fire in the odds of whatever you're betting and then how much you're betting, and it chops it up to give you, to your point, you're looking to get effectively the same amount in return, regardless of what the outcome ends up being. You need to be right. You need to have one of the correct outcomes. So again, for someone like myself, who you don't get a giant rebate, you're not a big computer, your money's not going through in that fashion. I'll go through, and it's the way that I went through with the BCBC, with the Dutching, with the doubles rather. I would typically try to find 2, maybe 3 horses. I didn't want to go much more than that, because that's when you really start to dilute what you're actually going to return out of it into one, the horse that I really like in the next race. So I'll find 2 or 3, link them up with that next one. Let's say I'm going to bet $100 or just for a nice round number. It'll then divide it up based on what the probable is going into that said horse for the next race, and chop it up accordingly so that whichever one of the 3 in the first leg gets through into that winner in the second leg, they're all going to return the same. I may only have $10 bet on one combination, but 60 bet on another. And then, do your math right there. You've got 30 left with the other piece there, just to try to chop it up equally. So in the long run, that 100 I bet, I want to get 800 out of it, or whatever it may be. And again, that goes back to trying to make your value line to determine fair odds. I wanted to lock in 8-1 or 7-1 on that second piece. That's why I bet it that way, knowing that just betting the horse to win, I'd probably get 3-1 or 7-2. So you have an opportunity to go through, and I would just encourage folks, if you don't typically go about things this way, and granted, it takes some legwork. It's not like you can just sit there, unless you're a mathematician and a brain, you can just crank it out in your head. You gotta do a little bit of work, but it's the way to make sure that you're going to get the numbers and the value that you want, but realistically that you need if you're going to do this for any length of time.
And then just to bring it back to the difference with a rebate is you're looking at people who they're basically just trying to churn money, turn over as much money as possible, and make their profit based on the rebate. It's very different than what you're going to do. I really, without that extra advantage of getting whatever.
I mean,
8, 10,
and some of them are huge
back.
too.
Yeah.
But even to the point of, and the example that I've sort of like used with family and friends, when I tell them about rebates and things of that nature, I go, let's just say hypothetically your rebate is 10, even though it could be considerably more than that. Let's say it's 10%, right? And you churn $1 million through the year and you break even. Because really that's going to be your end game. That's your goal at that point. You're going to end up getting that 10% kickback, which effectively, I mean, again, do the math. You've had yourself a nice, healthy year when the bottom line of the ledger says it was a wash. You didn't actually end up ahead as far as the betting itself is concerned. It's a nice problem to have. But the other thing I would say, though, is when people hear that, they're like, oh, that's easy. I go, no, it's not. No,
It's not.
It's not easy to come out square zero on the year. But those who have the ability to bet the amount that they do and they get a kickback, and again, I use 10%, but that's in the grand scheme of things, that can be on the very light side. Some folks get much, much healthier kickbacks. That's how some folks are able to pay the bills.
We'll look at it. I have a little tool here too. We'll calculate a Dutch double for the next race. It works better.
Actually, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it works much better when you get closer, so you'll have a more realistic picture of what the odds are going to be.
And it's a perfect example because there's only one horse I really want in that marathon race.
I can't wait to get there. Let's talk. What should we do? I said we were going to flash ahead to the Whitney, and we're getting close enough now where we should probably do that if we're going to do it now. Do you think we have time to do that in our little Dutch experiment here? Or should I?
Well, we have 8 minutes. Let's do this exercise. We still got 2 races to go. We got plenty of time to crank out the grade ones.
Okay, you're right. We'll start with the handicapping piece then. Who do you like in this? Who do you like in race? Is it 8? Race 8.
It would be race 9.
Who do you like? It's a good thing one of us is paying attention.
Race 9 is the Birdstone. That's the 1 3/4 race. I think everyone's going to look at Lone Rock based on that blowout win in the Brooklyn and say he's just way the horse to beat. Maybe he is. I like Moretti, the number 4. 3rd time off the bench for Pletcher. He came back in the Brooklyn. Todd typically has him ready to go. And by the way, congrats to Todd going into the Hall of Fame. No surprise there. Typically he has him ready to go off the bench, but 1.5 miles off of, a 10-month layoff, there's no guarantee there. I thought he ran fine, got a little tired at the end, came back in a much more difficult spot in the Suburban at 1.25 miles, was involved with the pace early on, ended up paying the price and faded. This is his game. He's going to find that sort of beat, just get into it, and he's just going to kind of grind away throughout. And I don't think the distance is going to be an issue. He won this race last year. So he's the horse that I'm most interested in that spot. And I think 5-2 that his morning line odds are, I think that's accurate. I think that's where he should be. That equates to roughly 27% chance, ballpark, give or take a couple of numbers. I try to just go with the whole number. That equates to 27%. So now the question is, are you going to be able to find a way to get better value than the 5-2, especially if you don't think you're going to get the 5-2 in race 9, by hooking someone up in this race coming up, race number 8, into him, preferably 2, because we're talking about the Dutching principle and trying to make your value that way. Is there anyone in this race that you like?
I had a couple of runners I was interested in. I agree with you about Moretti, my top pick as well. I can tell you a story about Rise the Guy, and I certainly won't be surprised at all to see Lone Rock win. Had a good conversation with somebody in the Money Plus message board or maybe he just sent me a direct message, but he's a In the Money Plus guy, about, there's a horse. Lone Rock might be the perfect example of the kind of horse, if I was playing a big pick, if I was playing a pick bigger than the 4, the 5 or the 6, very unlikely that I'm going to leave out. I think I would at least try to have some backup lines. You get a nice $10 winner with Mr. Kringle in the previous race. I don't want to get knocked out of my pick if Lone Rock wins. But in a double, in a pick 3, maybe even a pick 4, I'm okay leaning against. And I'd probably want 5 times as much Moretti as I'd want Rise the Guy, but I'd want a little bit of Rise the Guy. So then that brings us to this race. And I listed 3 runners I was interested in. The 7, Joey Loose Lips. I thought this is a possible pace play. The fig on some of the private figure service stuff I have access to came back very fast. The breeding doesn't look great to me for the stretch out, just like on my intuition. But I did notice on the Equine Edge genetic strength rating, the horse's figure, the GSR, their numerical representation of what the horse wants to be doing on its blood, goes up something like 6 points, which is significant. Our man Mike, the 1, very obvious on figures. They look a little bit better on dirt. And I'm just going through those last handful of trips. A few of them were better than they looked, I thought. Basically, the horse was very wide. I forget which races, but 2 of the 3 recent dirt races, the horse was very wide. And then the 5, Bingo John. Solid numbers. Definitely looks bred to go longer to me. And the GSR on Equine Edge agreed with that as well. So if I was doing traditional selections, I would have gone, I don't know what, I'll leave it in the order I wrote them down in here. 7, 1, 5. What do you think?
So I don't know if this will be the best race for the exercise because I've got 2 numbers that you don't have. But to going to the sort of the Dutching idea, my top pick would be the 6, Bustin' the Rules. I feel like this is a horse that in that most recent run at Finger Lakes, I think everyone just automatically downgrades the Finger Lakes shippers. It was very good. The winner came back next out with a 75. I think a 75 right around there is good enough to win this race. And I don't think the distance will be any issue. And the 2, I don't know if I love the 2 quick return, but from a numbers standpoint, makes sense. The pedigree, I'm iffy on at 9 furlongs, but I do think we're going to work out a decent trip here with Ricardo up. So those 2 numbers that I'm looking at right now on the tote board, the 2 is 9-1 and the 6 is 8-1. So when you go and compare that to what we're looking at with the double, the 2-4 double, knowing that Moretti is the 4 in the next race, that's coming back 9-2 for 2. And the 6-4 is coming back 85. So let's just, for round numbers, say they're both roughly 45-1 odds. Okay. And if I was going to bet $10 into this double, the way that it would chop it up, and again, this is not a perfect example because they're the exact same price. But the point is, let's use one of your horses anyway. What were your numbers again?
Throw the 7 in there.
Okay, so my 2 at 45-1 and Pete's 7, who the 7-4 exacta is coming back 214 for a deuce. So let's call that 107-1 roughly. Actually, it just got pounded down to 181. So let's go 90-1. Now, if we were going to bet $10 into this, my horses would each be $4 doubles, and Pete's would be $2 double. And again, the idea is that if any one of our 3 win this first leg and then Moretti wins in the second leg, we're going to get the same return out of it. And I hope that all of this verbal piece without showing how it works is making sense. But that's the general gist of it, is you're trying to say, look, I'll take any one of these 3, but I've had them chopped up, the denominations accordingly, that I'm going to get the same return regardless of which one of the 3 wins, with Moretti still needing to get the job done.
I just popped the numbers, just all 5 of our numbers, into this little calculator I have to bet 100. It tells me straight up that we're going to get between, it's basically, with all 5 of our horses even, it would be a 4-1 return if the numbers held right now. The combinations as follows: $44 double 1-4, $10 double 2-4, $28 double 5-4, $11 double 6-4, and a $6 double 7-4. So I'm just going to go ahead.
And
do that. And I'll bet Rise the Guy to win. Rise the Guy should be a decent price. I can at least get the stake back if that one wins, rather than really muddying the waters and overcomplicating things here.
And I would like to think, and again, to that point too, for the little exercise I did there with the $4, $4, and $2 double, that would have been 10 total wagered to, regardless of which one of the three horses in this race were to win with Moretti, come back 170 back. So again, you're effectively looking at a 17-1 return. That's a hell of a lot more than Moretti's going to be. And if he is 17-1, there's no chance he's going to win. So that's, without going into the minutia of that piece.
Yeah, that's pretty funny and exactly right. It's also just interesting to see. You can, with the calculator, you can see what an all double would pay Dutched.
Yes.
Just as more as a thought experiment. But they're off here. We'll see if we can get one of these. See if we can get one of these runners in. I was thinking the 7 might get a little bit looser than what it appears to be here. Is this going to maybe set up for something from off the pace? We shall see. And we'll get some fractions here in a second as they're into the turn.
I have to pull up another feed because it's difficult for me to make out what's happening. We're a little choppy right now.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on the house feed, but yeah, I do have it up on a monitor. And there is a big long shot. Here's Waldo out on the front end. The quarter went into 24.19. Looks like the 7 Joey Loose Lips did catch a little bit of money, making a decent run, as is the 6 Busting the Rules. Looks all right now among the horses that we talked about. The half comes back 48.86, and still pretty much looks like all to play for here, but we definitely have some long shots in decent position as the real running is getting ready to start here.
And this will be another good race. I'll be curious to see where horses come from, if anyone rallies from off of it, because for the most part, and I believe it's our man Mike is trying to make a big move on the outside. Look at Joey. Go on with it, Joey. That was a nice kick.
Yeah, that was a very impressive looking move there on the turn, and we'll see if it proves to be decisive and look really brilliant. But I always like the aggressiveness. Now, did he go too soon? Is he gonna run out of gas here and get tagged by the likes of our man Mike? He's a little bit going up and down now, that's for sure. Find a little bit more. Really. No, I think the 5's got us. This could
Finish. Oh no.
For a second there, it looked like he was going to dig back in, but that's pretty funny. So the 5 gets it done in the end. Maybe moved a hair too soon. It kind of felt that way, but again, I don't believe in, for somebody who complains so much about how passive these guys are, I'm not going to complain when somebody tries to take the bull by the horns, and gosh, it almost worked, but
Now, I will give you credit. That's a hell of a call. Now, it's easy for me to sit here in hindsight and say this. This had all the makings of a score horse. This has all the makings of a score horse, meaning these are low profile connections. A horse that on paper, has some positives, but is by no means a standout. Opens at 6 or 7-1. Floats up some, still goes off at 8-1. Took a good amount of money. This had all the makings of a horse that everybody involved was trying to make a score, and they almost did. And to your point, I'm not going to fault the rider. Vargas was listed, by the way. I don't know if he actually rode or not. It was Irad picked it up.
Oh, so, wow!
I'm not going to fault the ride. He to me that was a winning move, and it was just a hair too early, but that's the sort of move you make. You blow this thing open and you say, "Come and catch me," and unfortunately, somebody did.
Yeah, it didn't quite work out, but it was a huge effort and a brilliantly timed ride by Manny Franco. And hey, at least it was one of the ones in our Dutch. So
good call there. Good call there.
It's fun to go back and look and see. I lost the screen. I've had a couple of people ask about the calculator. I'll tell you what, just reach out to me offline, because there's political relationships and things that I want to be. I'm not sure it's a problem, but I want to be sensitive to. So reach out to me in themoneypodcast.com, the contact page over there. If you holler at me, that'll just show up in my email, and I can give you some more information if you're interested in a tool like that, and we'll show you how it's done. But it can be very, very powerful stuff, very useful for live band contests too. And yeah, that was another situation where I wonder what I mean, liking the 3. I don't know. I didn't play the exacta. If I'd been a little more focused on wagering and less on broadcasting, maybe we could have got that. Certainly, that strategy. It's that dollar exacta. I wouldn't have had to play too many of them, and I think I'd rather have the dollar exacta than the place money there.
Yep.
I think this is an idea basically lifted from the Mike Maloney book, Betting Within Edge, that you like insurance. I don't like insurance when it's betting a lot to make a little, right?
Correct.
So like there are people who will tell you, bet 3 times as much to place and let that be your hedge on the win. And it's like, to me, that's just off kilter, because it's like you're just putting too much of your bankroll into a strategy that's really only going to be covering your bet. Like, it doesn't work for me. Whereas this is the opposite. This is you're betting a little to win a lot as your insurance.
Correct.
There are people, and it always feels great in horse racing when you're betting a little to win a lot. It's not always realistic to be the core value of every single play. Sometimes you bet a lot to win a lot, and I'm okay with that. But when it comes to my insurance, bet a little to win a lot. I love that idea. And the exacta as place, the exacta, the key horse. The other thing that's very, very similar is when it works with a price horse like Joey Loose Lips or like your runner in the last. It also works when you've got a key horse in a pay leg, right?
Yes.
So you're singled to the 7 here in pick 3s, and then you get to this leg, and what do you do? And many people will say, oh, well, you could bet 3 or 4 to at least try to get your money back. I don't like that, because that's betting a lot to win a little insurance, which I don't like. But how about you take the 5 contenders and you put your key horse that was paying the bet off in second place? That same idea. And you can turn that. You can still score even if your key horse runs second. And then, I don't know, maybe this is too emotional of a way of looking at it, but it helps me. If my key horse wasn't good enough to even run second, well, I just wasn't meant to be. I'm able to walk away from that much more easily than running second with my key horse in the last leg of a pick and getting nothing.
The only thing that I differ on that idea, and it goes back to prior experience when I won the Aqueduct contest, many, many years ago now. We got to that final race, and Kevin Cox happened to be there, and I was talking with him and Lee Davis, who were on the HorsePlayer show with me, and I said, what do I do here? This is who I am betting with the contest bet. And I go, what about the other, anybody else? Because at the time, I don't know, I think I was in like 4th or 5th. And they said, you've already got effectively your win bet on the horse that you like the most. And if the horse wins, you're winning the whole darn thing. If one of the other 2 or 3, and it wasn't the entire field, it was only the next 2 or 3 that I thought were legitimate threats. They said, go ahead and bet $100 or $200 on each one of them. Again, keep in mind, it was smaller numbers, and all those horses, I think the minimum was like 8 to 1. They were all between like 8 and 15 to 1, somewhere thereabouts. And they said, go and bet $100 or $200 on each one of those. Worst case scenario, one of them wins. You're going to get a little bit back there, and you're going to run, I don't know, 4th in the contest. You're still going to walk out of here with 5 or 10 or whatever it was. Or I guess if you want to look at the other way, worst case scenario, you end up winning the whole thing, and who cares about the $600 you just lost because you got 40 coming back. So that would be the only time that I would go and kind of zig to the methodology that you laid out.
That makes sense to me, because it's almost like we were talking about with the rebate before. You're playing with this added equity of the contest, which changes the logic. Now, you could say the same thing if it was a big pick 6 score, but for me, I guess the key thing is I don't mind the type of hedge you just described. I don't mind at all on horses I like that either circumstances won't allow me to bet, or I've been in a situation where I had horses that were B horses in the last leg, but I'd already used up 2 of my Bs before I got there. So then you've got an opportunity that you could get beat by a horse you actually liked, and then I don't mind hedging. I just don't like second guessing at the end and trying to lock in a profit. If you can do it efficiently, I'm not going to fault you for it, but I much more prefer to hedge on horses that I like that I couldn't get alive to or couldn't afford. The last horse you throw off the ticket, I have no problem with that either. JK and I once had a nice hit on a pick six at Santa Anita it was the last horse we couldn't afford. We were live to very big pick sixes. And, we'd spent 5 minutes talking about the horse before being like, we can't quite afford this ticket. No problem at all betting in that once you got that big equity in the last leg, 500 to win on that horse. But that's the key thing for me is don't let your equity make you become too conservative with what you're betting.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. And I tell you what, it's a great and terrible position to be in because it's good in one sense that, you're really set up for a score. I mean, you want to be in those positions. That's the whole reason that you play. But it's also a terrible thing because you can run through 15 different machinations of whatever you're trying to do. And you're always, until the race is run and the results come in, you're always going to sit there and go, did I make the right call? Did I do this? Did I do that? Somebody else will offer up some other opinion and you go, I hadn't thought of that. And it just, those times when you have something giant on the line, that 25 minutes feels like 25 hours. And it's some people love it and some people hate it. I am in the camp of it's not my cup of tea, just because just let me know when the race is over. Did I win or lose? In that instance. Otherwise, but again, that's why you play in the game. You try to get there and put yourself in positions where you can have giant scores.
It is great and horrible. I mean the stress, the nervousness of sweating out that last leg of a pick six can be super unpleasant, especially I feel like at the track, especially that can be. I mean, I just remember how stressed I was with the two Travers days, the bad story and the good story. The bad story was American Pharoah. I mean, it was so exciting, but so stressful being alive to all that we were alive to that day. And then having a similar feeling, but getting the good result. Was it 1 or 2 years later with the one that paid off to Lady Eli that we cut the wide swath out of on that day. Pretty amazing feeling. But I'd rather be having it than not having it. But I know what you mean. I kind of it's stressful.
Don't get me wrong. I want to have the feeling because it means I've done something right to that point. Now it's a matter of is it going to come in or not.
Yeah, that's right. All right, here we go. Vargas off the mount in the finale. Number 7, new rider Ramon Vasquez, who's in town to ride the favorite of the future. Great note. We love it when you guys help us out there and gals help us out there with your reporting. Let us know you're watching. Let us know where you are. We want to hear from you. We got another another question about slumps. What to do? Mike Maloney suggests going back to basics. That's not a bad idea. A complete break. I think it depends how bad the slump is and what your mental state is. I think when you get to a point where you feel defeated, it's a very hard game to win at the best of times. So when you go in feeling like you're going to lose, like you can't shake that idea, you're not going to do your best play. And I have no problem with a break in that instance. But I mean, contests are also kind of a nice thing in that situation. Again, fixed cost, you get your entertainment. But I mean, I had that one slump a couple of years ago up here that culminated in betting ahead of plan for Chad Brown and getting a tremendous price. And then, the horse looks like winning and then ends up getting run down at the wire in excruciating fashion. It was a day I said I wasn't going to bet, but then everything combined, the way the horse looked, everything combined that I had to bet. Like it was just, if you're at all a horse player, you had to bet. And then to lose, I had to go home famously went home to my mother for a few days. And that break did me well. We came back up here and had a good last few days of the meet. But yeah, I don't judge anybody who needs to put it away and chill for a while. But I do think there's other things you can do as well. What advice do you have, Matt, for people in that position?
Yeah, I think you can go the two ways that have kind of been laid out. You can either strip it down to the bare bones and say, I'm going back to the nuts and bolts. Whatever your methodology was at the point of that cold spell, get it right back down to the kind of core foundational pieces that you've used to learn, that you've used to get to the position that you're in. Or, and I personally believe in this more simply because I relate it a lot to my golf game. When things go off the rails and I can't go and talk to somebody about a lesson right away, or if I'm just that dejected, to your point, Pete, it's one of those things, you hear the old saying, scared money doesn't make money, or any of those sort of things. I think of it from a golf standpoint. If it's a shot that I'm not confident hitting, it's typically not going to end well. as opposed to, and it can purely be a mental thing, as opposed to me when I'm standing over, even if it's a very, very difficult shot to pull off, if I feel like I can do it, that's usually when a good positive outcome is going to happen. So if you really get to the point where you are that down, I think you're better off just taking, even if it's only 2 days or 3 days. I prefer a week. If you can get away from it for a week and just shut it off and not even look at it, keep a track of what's going on. If you want to watch a race, go right ahead. In a weird way, that may be the best time to watch races because it makes you don't have a rooting interest unless you love a certain horse from a fan standpoint. But from a gambling standpoint, you have no skin in the game. You sit there, you take it in for what it is, the sporting event, why we, many of us that are fans, why we did fall in love with the game, not just the betting standpoint about it, but watching the sporting event take place. I think that can be the best remedy for a bad run, is just hitting the reset button and then coming back. And when you do come back, you go into it with a fresh set of eyes. You're feeling good. You're not even thinking about, you've turned your back on that. That's done. Whatever happened. Here we are. Let's go forward in a positive note. So I think you can go either way, really.
The mental aspect of the game is so underrated. And one of the most eloquent people I've heard speak about it is actually another former castmate of yours. We're giving lots of shout outs to the old HorsePlayers cast today, Michael Baychok, who right now, as we speak, I actually invited him to come on and join us today for a minute, but he is on his way to Saratoga. I believe he's in the air. I don't know if he put in picks. Hopefully he put in picks for this. I know he's been a huge supporter of this event. And when it comes to thoroughbred aftercare, he's all about it. And he's helping us actually next week. Let's give a nice plug to our charity event for the benefit of the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. You can find tickets, trfinc.org/players. He is going to be making a chicken and andouille sausage gumbo. And we're going to be having it out on, I think it's called Simply Food by Mora, out on Maple Avenue. And we're going to have a great time. It's next Wednesday night. Tickets available. I think it's $25 for a bowl of gumbo and a beer. And then I think there'll be more beers on a donation basis. Heck, if we have gumbo left over, we'll do more gumbo on a donation basis. Really looking forward to seeing a lot of viewers and listeners out there. If you like our act, by the way, check us out in the Money Media Network. You can subscribe to that main feed over on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out in themoneypodcast.com. Matt, we're going to miss you next week, but we're excited by the fact that you're rolling into town a little bit later in the meet.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting up there. Really am. I'm trying to figure out what my Travers plan looks like. That may be a day in, day out sort of thing, or stay for one night, either Friday night or Saturday night. But the following week, that should be a nice opportunity to just kind of get up there, take a deep breath. Hopefully we'll do this thing together while we're up there. And even if we can't, we'll do it in the same room, but with different computers or whatever. We'll figure it out. But then being up there I'm really looking forward to the Jockey Club Gold Cup because, boy, it sounds like, and we'll find out how everything shakes down on Saturday in the Whitney. There could be some really interesting horses running in that Gold Cup. So, but first things first, let's get through Saturday.
I like it, and we've got this Whitney that we've been teasing, talking about, and I think we've left enough time. We'll get to some great comments to get to. We'll pull those up after, but it's a small field, but it's one of these races I think it's extremely interesting race to talk about. Very curious to hear where you stand as we take a look at this year's Whitney.
I think the fun thing is I feel like we've talked about these 5 horses on this show already this year individually, let alone from the shape of an actual race. The race starts with Nick's Go, and you and I talked about him when they made the audible to go to the Met, how it just didn't feel good. It didn't seem like a confident move, didn't seem like a positive move. They were doing it because, well, we might as well. And he ran like that. And then he came back in that Cornhusker, and I said, boy, that to me is a bad sign that they're not going to the Whitney. They're going to run him in Iowa. No disrespect to the Cornhusker handicap or anybody at Prairie Meadows, but that's not the Grade 1 Whitney, arguably the most prestigious race that's not a Breeders' Cup or Triple Crown in the United States. Well, lo and behold, they are going to run there. They're going to run there and here. And it goes back to, and I need to know your thought. I mean, we heard the 2-turn versus 1-turn narrative. I didn't want to buy into it immediately. I thought that was kind of a cop-out. But now when I go through and I draw a line through the Met and I draw a line through the Saudi Cup, and I look at these 5 races that Brad Cox has had the horse going 2 turns. If you just look at those, not only is there a case to be made that he is the best horse in the race, there's a case to be made that he's far and away the fastest horse in the race, and he's going to clear to the front. So, I mean, you put that combination together, if you're a believer, he's going to be hard to beat.
That's the thing. I want to beat him. I really do.
Yeah.
Because he's been a little Jekyll and Hyde throughout the season. But there is a narrative that explains it, that we've been, Michelle Yu, who actually sat in for me on this week's podcast, was the first person to make this observation before the race in Saudi, that she felt like he was going to be taken out of his game with the more testing 1-turn mile configuration than the 2 turns, which he apparently, that's where he gets his edge in a lot of ways, is running around turns. It's becoming pretty easy to see it when you look at the PPs. But then you put him here and you got to figure out everybody else is handicapping the race too. Everybody else is seeing that on pace figures he looks dead loose. But, do we really think that Irad Ortiz aboard Swiss Skydiver is just going to let him go out there and wing? Is she good enough to put pressure on him and have this set up for one of the 2 horses we expect to be coming from further off the pace? It's tough. I sort of punted and went with him, honestly, just figuring that the pace scenario was going to be enough to put him back over the top in this spot. But the more I'm thinking about it, are we really going to expect them in the Grade 1 Whitney to let him waltz on the front end? What do we think?
No, I think someone will, and you brought up Swiss Skydiver. She feels like, to me right now, the only other one that can actually go with him early on, or at least make him really commit to the front end. But then again, I look at some of the pace figures, and to be fair, I need to take a look at one of the other programs I still use. I don't have it just yet to see what some of those velocity ratings look like and the feet per second numbers. But Swiss Skydiver, I think the only way she can win is to be aggressive. I don't think she can sit and pass. I brought up, I don't know if it was last week or the week before on this show, that she's had a lot of starts and stops, not because of any kind of physical issues, just because of unforeseen things. And I say that she did have that fever before the Ogden Phipps, so that's a little bit of a hiccup. But she couldn't get into another race at Saratoga that she wanted to get into, or that was the goal. I don't know that her best is good enough to beat this entire field. I think she can be the fly in the ointment for Knicks Go, but in my heart of hearts, I don't know that she's good enough. I made her 13-1. She's 6-1 on the morning line. I think I love that they're here. And Kenny McPeak has even said that if she wins this race, they'll go to the Jockey Club Gold Cup. So part of me actually wants her to win. But realistically, I don't know if I love her chances.
I am having some flashbacks, though, to last year's Preakness ahead of the race, where my gut instinct was to be against her, except maybe as a pace factor. Yours is the same. I bet you we'll pull up a bunch of other analysts whose opinions we respect, and I just have a feeling the way that a lot of us in the industry read races, that's going to be the opinion as far as Swiss Skydiver does it. And then maybe she is 13. She won't be 13-1, but maybe she does go off at a very big price again. Heck, she was 11-1 back in the Preakness that day. We all thought we were betting against the 7-2 shot, and then we end up getting double figures. Now, we could, that race, there were some mitigating circumstances, including an absolutely brilliant ride and a track that was very much playing in her favor, and a strange decision on the favorite not to take the rail on a day when it was good. But that's all for another day. She got the win, and that's what matters in this game. And so that's my only concern about being too negative about her, is I have seen this movie before. But I think the much bigger question is, if she does put that pressure on Knicks Go, who do you think the beneficiary will be?
Well, I think most people will go right to Maxfield, and understandably so. The way that he has run at 1 1/8 or these sort of middle distance numbers throughout his career, he's been spectacular. He's only been defeated one time, and that came in the Big Cap. I need to see him produce the giant races against a field of this caliber to fully buy in. And I have to preface that, though, by saying he and Silver State, to me, are in the same exact boat. The difference is Silver State's going to be a much better price on Saturday, one that you may even be able to gamble on, compared to Maxfield. Maxfield, I would be stunned if he's not the second choice in here. 8-5 on the morning line. I even saw some folks on social say they thought he should be the morning line favorite as opposed to Knicks Go. he's the one to me in my eyes that probably stands. I can't even say that because if Silver State to me is the wild card because, and I'm curious your thoughts. I initially thought the Met Mile was a terrible race. And then now that we've had 4 horses come back out of it, keep in mind, it was a 6-horse field. You had Mischievous Alex lay an egg last weekend at 70. He earned a 77 buyer. The other 3 horses have earned buyers of 113, 101, and 102, and they've all won their next start coming out of it. So maybe that Met maybe I was just way, way wrong about analyzing the Met when I watched it, and that's actually going to be the key race of all key races. Silver State has done nothing wrong since he came back in his first start after his long break as a 3-year-old. In my heart of hearts, I don't think he's this good, but I don't know that he's not this good. And from a gambling standpoint, he's the one that I'm most interested in. I wouldn't have a giant position on him. I made him 9-2. If I could get that, I'd probably dabble a little bit just to have just in case he actually is this good. But to me, he is the wild card of all the wild cards in here. Maxfield makes plenty of sense, but he's going to be too short for me. And to the commenter's point, look, I love by my standards, but I'm not. I maintain that he's a grade 1/2 horse as opposed to a grade 1 horse.
He's maybe a little interesting for underneath, though, by my standards, based on. I mean, I think you make great points about the form of the Met. Could this be a case where the unexpectedly slow early pace in the Met worked to the disadvantage of the figure?
Yes, possible.
Figure came back okay, but it didn't come back like what the form looks like. And I agreed, it wasn't a race I was expecting to come back from and want to bet a lot of these horses. But they have put the lie to our like slightly cynical view of the situation. And then there's also the fact that Silver State on that Belmont day where the track was not playing to the inside was down there the whole time.
Yes.
And we've seen a few of these horses come back and run pretty well.
Yes.
So I think you've got a couple of reasons to believe Silver State's form is better than it looks. I don't know that he's going to get the trip. I mean, this is going to be a very different Knicks Go. This is not going to be let's go as slow as we get, that mistaken notion of taking the horse's speed weapon away from them that we saw in the Met Mile. I watched that race with JK, and he was at the half-mile pole. He was like just freaking out. Like, what is he doing? He's not going fast enough. And I mean, I'm not sure it mattered, in the big picture of life for other reasons we said about Knicks Go, but he wasn't wrong that right. Wasn't, that those were the dynamics. It was too slow. So, I mean, I in my paper picks, I went with Knicks Go. The more I think about it, though, gosh, there's a very interesting case for Silver State. If that 9-2 were available, and I'll take a little bit of a look at some international markets while we chat and see if there's any prices up there, Matt. But I'm coming around to the horse. I mean, that he would have been my second pick, and I'm coming around to the horse as the one that might be the value, just depending on what the odds are, and we'll have a perspective on that in a minute.
Yeah, and to your point, if someone came up to me and said, "Give me the winner," I would go with Knicks Go, just because I think he does have that tactical edge, and I think that's the other important piece. His pace figures, specifically the Timeform US pace figures, they're just so much faster than anyone else, especially in the interior parts of the race. I mean, I don't even know if I want to use the Cornhusker, because that to me is, he was just much better than those horses. Go back to like the Pegasus World Cup, which it's been well documented. It's not a very good race in the big picture. Pace figs of 145 and 141 internally. Even the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, which he did run into a pretty decent field, 144 and 137. I mean, nobody else is really capable of running numbers that fast. And I know, it's not apples to apples with different distances and things like that. But if I needed to just pick the winner, I probably would go with Knicks Go. But Silver State is one of those rare instances. Doesn't happen often, but my gut is telling me that I don't believe it. But he still may end up being the price that dictates or warrants considering a bet, because he just kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. And by no means do I expect him to be 8-1. I think he's going to be pretty darn close. David Aragona is the best morning line maker that there is. He's going to be pretty darn close to that 4-1, give or take a point or two here or there. Maxfield's going to be too short for my liking. Swiss Skydiver, I've said it. I would be thrilled if she won. I'm not really she's in that darned if you do, darned if you don't position. Do you really want to be the one chasing, or do you want to be the one putting the boots to Nick's go? Either way, I don't think it works out for you all that well, but I think they have to be aggressive. And then again, by my standards, I mean, I suppose if he was, I made him 13-1. I guess if he got up in that range, I'd consider him. But I think to your point, what you brought up with him, I think he's a great, if we're talking about keying and different ways of structuring wagers, I would love to key him at 8, 10, 13-1 underneath and say, you know what, let me try to get Nick's go on top. And maybe one of these other, Silver State second or third, maybe I can split the two of them with by my standards or something like that to spice up a try.
I'll give you the prices here. We'll give a quick final thought, and then we'll get to this race at Saratoga. 13-8 Nick's go. So that's a pretty interesting price, a little bit higher than 3-2. Maxfield 9-4, so a little bit thicker than 2-1. The exact number 9-2 on Silver State, 13-2 with Skydiver. By my standards, 8-1. You can only make one bet on that board. What is it?
You said Nick's go was 13-8.
13-8.
I made him 8-5.
Basically the same.
Yeah, and to be honest, Maxfield's number is even higher than I thought it would be. He's between 2 and 5-2. I made him 5-2. I would still go with Silver State at the 4.5 on the nose.
I'd probably on this board just keep it simple and pick Nick's go. I'll probably do that in my column for attheraces.com. Definitely a case though where I would want to have the exact. If Silver State wins, I'd love to have some Silver State Nick's go. And if you do bet Silver State to win, I would say at least for a little bit having a one-way Nick's go Silver State exacta in case Nick's go just goes completely nuts. And
you could even make a case that even if you love Nick's go and you think there's no way that he's going to lose this thing, but you don't love the price, you just kind of laid out. There's nothing wrong with just cold punch. If you think Silver State's second best, cold punch Nick's go over Silver State, probably going to get somewhere. You should get a decent return on that, I would think.
Good stuff. Those are our thoughts on this year's Grade 1 Whitney Stakes from Saratoga. And with that, we move on to this ninth race at Saratoga. We talked about it from a handicapping perspective before. I was a little bit interested in the one, and Matt and I both had Moretti as a pretty strong top pick. We've got this double going along, catching all kinds of money. 2-1 seems pretty strong on this one into the teeth of the 4-5 shot Lone Rock. I'm just going to take that as positive signal in this case. Any final thoughts on how you might approach this one from a betting point of view?
No, it's going to more or less be a sit out for me. I may try to hook something up into the finale. I do think there are one or two interesting horses in there, but from this race, there is a case to be made. And I had thought this, and I had actually liked the horse a little bit in the Brooklyn. I know they're getting ready to load in. I believe Mike Beer brought it up in his analysis. If you really like Lone Rock, you should consider Rise the Guy, because 2 starts back, Rise the Guy was much better than that 2 3/4 margin would suggest in that run at Churchill. He just got stopped and had to, or no, he made the big move early on and then flattened out. I don't think they're nearly as far apart as the tote would suggest.
We'll see what's going to transpire here. Michael makes a great point about Nick's go, calling him a classic winner run out type. And with that in mind, with a winner run out type, I love the idea of the Nick's go over Silver State exacta. But maybe you try to do something else with Silver State, not with Nick's go on top. You know what I mean? Like whether it's betting a little bit at the 9-2 to cover the stake, or messing around in some horizontal bets like the double. Those are some very appealing fixed odds prices right now. We'll have to see what happens, as we get closer to post. But honestly, if you could lock those in, we talked about Dutching doubles before. You can Dutch win as well, and in this case, you'd end up taking an odds-on type price. But if those are to me, value, and this happens much more in fixed odds. Value is just if the price is greater than the chance of winning. Like there can be, it's some people will disagree with this, but I will see situations where a 1-2 shot, and it's a scenario I think is going to cover 75% of the time. Well, that's value. And other people will tell me that that humans are always delude themselves about trying to price tail end risk and all these things, and maybe they're right. And it's not a play I'm looking to make very often, but it is a play I will make from time to time.
Fundamentally, though, that logic is correct.
Yeah.
Now, if they want to say it's human error in correctly identifying the probability, that's a different story. But fundamentally, what you said is accurate, and I know you and I talked about it as they're coming by us for the first time here, going 3 turns.
Always enjoyable at the paddock bar during this scenario where some of the noobs start screaming as if this is the actual wild boys. Sometimes just to troll them, I'll join in.
Why aren't they pushing on the horse? Why are we just sitting there?
They weren't even trying.
Fundamentally, though, your point is accurate, and I know I've brought it up here before. We had come on for one of these shows. I don't know if it was Royal Ascot or earlier than that. You had a horse that you were really into over there. And I believe the price was somewhere around 6 to 5, and you thought the horse should have been considerably shorter. By definition, those are actually the best overlays because statistically, you're more likely to win.
There was one today. The Pletcher runner in the first race. There was somebody asked me, "Hey, is 6 to 5 a good price on this horse?" And I was like, "You mean the 3 to 5 shot that's about to, as long as it breaks, is going to win?" Like, yeah, yes. Fill your boots. Fill your boots at even money or over. And those bets, unlike the example I gave before of, trying to ascertain the difference between a 67% chance and a 75% chance, I feel real confident knowing certain horses are legit odds-ons, and you can get odds against, and those are some of the best bets available in racing to fixed odds and international type players. Now, Lone Rock is not going to let Moretti do his thing here without being seriously tested, and he's gone to him early enough, Matt, that I wonder if this thing couldn't set up for something to come running from off the pace.
I don't know.
You think, is it a match race or what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a sprint home.
Okay.
And I honestly, I think we're going to win.
I hope so. It looks like Moretti is finding down there. Well, as I say that.
Change leads, bud.
Yeah, the favorite has seized the advantage. And we're falling apart a little bit. There is a late run. A little bit from the 5, but I think that this incredible Lone Rock run, he's just finding more and going to pull this one out. And it's going to come 3, probably 5, and then 4. Yeah, that looks exactly like what it's going to be. This is an impressive horse and was a good winner again and a really smart tactical ride as well in this spot. I mean, he didn't let that advantage amount to much, and then just proved himself superior. I don't mind these marathon races. My one gripe, if it's a gripe, would be I wish we had more of them. If they're going to have this be a division, like give us some more form to go on to take some of the guessing out of it. But I don't mind these races at all, and I think Lone Rock has really just proven himself to be a very impressive performer in New York this season.
Would you be tempted to run him in the Jockey Club?
I think you'd think about it. I mean, because what if you maybe the ceiling is even higher than they imagine, and we'll see how many of these horses are going to be coming back. I mean, you sure wouldn't think he'd fit against the horses in the Whitney, but I mean, just thinking about what some years Woodward's, when that was the closing weekend Saratoga race looks like, and what some years Jockey Club Gold Cups look like. I mean, I don't think he's going to look too bad. I mean, this horse, I think there's reason to believe has, certainly an opportunity to run a triple figure buyer. And if you can do that, don't you fit at least on the edges?
I just think with a horse that's in this sort of form, who doesn't seem to be finding any issues right now, I think you at least got to take a shot. I mean, when are you, especially for, say what you will with certain barns and whatnot. I mean, this is probably one of the nicer horses this barn has had. I know they've got Keep Me in Mind, who's a good 3-year-old. He's probably better than I've given him credit for. But this horse, I would have to find out anyway. He likes Saratoga. The distance isn't an issue for him. 1.25 miles. He's not a need the lead type. He's also not coming from 100 out of it. I would be. It's another instance where, to me, just as if I were an owner, I would be so disappointed if I didn't find out.
Right.
And then I wondered, well, what, let's just say there's something crazy that happens in the Jockey Club and a 30-1 shot wins it. And you go, why? What, we couldn't have won that? I had to find out.
Yeah, I agree. And it'd be different if there was Oh, but what about the grade 1 going a mile and a half
Right.
on the dirt in September?
Exactly.
That race doesn't exist. So you take your shot, and then you could always regroup and look for some, dirt extreme route shots a little bit later in the year. But I mean, when literally all you do is win at some point, you want to figure out just how good you are, right?
I would think so anyway. I brought it up on my pod earlier this week. There was a horse up at Woodbine for Larry Ravelli who won a 2-year-old race on Saturday. And I paired up Beyer tops of 80 in the first 2 starts. Has just looked like a legitimate runner. I said I would be disappointed if he's not in the hopeful on closing weekend, because at this point it's early enough that, guess what, if he can't stand up on dirt, so be it. You go back to, you either reroute him to a different sort of synthetic race, or preferably you think of a race like the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint and you say we can take a shot there. Why not? The Tapeta to the turf, a little, it's close enough anyway. You'd think he can step on that. But with a horse that good right now, I would be, and with the pedigree that he's got on top, it may not sound brilliant. He's by Dominus, I believe. Oh, no, excuse me, Trap Shot. But on the bottom, the Dam is a sibling to Sir Winston, who won the Belmont a couple of years ago. So distance shouldn't be an issue for him. I'm in that position where you're at a point now where what do you have to lose to find out? The sky is the limit. And if it turns out it doesn't work, all right, you reroute.
Some good questions. Getting back to other conversations we had earlier, Tom acknowledging that, yes, going home to mom definitely was a rough day of racing. Yeah, that was not a fun one. Trish has a good question. Advice on splitting contest entries, driving her crazy today. That's a really tough one. I mean, that split ticket disease is something that's very real, and I think to some degree is inevitable. I mean, the one thing I'll say is to try to, as much as possible, have some horses that you're going to play the same on all tickets, and then only in the races where you're really torn, do the splitting. It can still get you, but if you're playing like 2 different horses in every race, I feel like you're really asking for split tickets in a pick and pray format. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, so from a pick and pray standpoint, I agree with the premise of, let's just use today. You had the entire card. You've got 10 races. Find those. There's not necessarily like a number, an arbitrary number, but find those 5, 6 that you really like, and you stick into them, and they're on both of your tickets. And then in those other 4 races or 5 races, depending on how many you pair up, you look at it and say, I think I like this horse, but I could see this horse winning as well. I don't know if I would get stuck into 2 of the chalks in those plays. I think I would probably shop around for a price. If you're not so sold on a horse in a race, in all likelihood, you don't really love the second one as well. So maybe you want to kind of shop around a little bit. I would change that philosophy, though, with a live format. The live format, if you have 2 entries, I would always go with, and I believe this was another Kevin Cox piece that he had alluded to, and I've used it to success. Whichever entry of the 2 has more money on it, you play the shorter odds of the horses that you like. Because, again, from a probability standpoint, the horses that are shorter prices are going to win more frequently than the big numbers. The good news is if you catch a big number on the other ticket, you can kind of go up the leaderboard with both of them. And yes, there's a chance that you end up with nothing, but you've got 2 of them sitting just outside. That's always a possibility. But guess what? This is a form of gambling. You got to figure out, you got to go into it knowing that sometimes things just aren't going to work out for you. But I've found that's, from a live standpoint, a good way to maximize your opportunity to get a prize, whether it's winning or qualifying for something else or whatever it may be.
Paul Sherman calls that the good ticket, bad ticket theory of multiple entries, where you hit something, the tickets are created equal. Once you hit something on one that's not on the other, that becomes the good ticket. And then you put the longer price on the bad, quote unquote, bad ticket, the shorter price on the good ticket. Now, the exception to that is, I wouldn't say it should be all about price. It should be all about which horse you like best. Your sort of top opinion, second opinion. Because if you have your good ticket, you want your best opinion on. Now, if you have no value judgment between them, I think you can use the price as a proxy for that in the way that Matt was describing. of course, you'll see many instances then where the good ticket becomes the bad ticket and you get yourself into some sort of split ticket hell. It's a frustration that contest players have to deal with, but especially in pick and pray, where it's so arbitrary and you can't change. I really do like that idea. And if you go back also, Trish, and you look at some of the successful players, and we should check out a leaderboard here in a minute, speaking of successful players, if you look at what they do, I think you're going to see that a lot. Where 5 of the 10 races they have the same horse, and then where they're torn, that's where they put those others in, and then in that instance, I think you're gonna see a little bit less of the split ticket stuff, because you got to remember there's no, like, you if you're not going to make your goal in a contest of finishing wherever you're trying to get in the prize pool, like from a theory point of view, like any point that you've gotten to there that didn't get you to your goal, it's kind of wasted. You'd rather be first or last in a lot of contests. It feels good to cash and have $30 at the end of HorsePlayer Happy Hour. Maybe that feels better than being on zero, but odds are the player on zero is probably doing it better than the person who finishes with 35.
The contest format is one in which you can't be you can't get self-conscious about what other people are going to look. They're going to see your name at the bottom of the leaderboard with $0. If you're doing it the right way, it really doesn't make a difference. It's very much it's a win or nothing thing, with exceptions if you're playing in a cash contest and they're the top 10 or whatever it may be. But for the most part, if you're trying to get into the top 2, so like for one of these happy hours, or if you're someone who's just trying to accrue points and look to the big picture, whether you have $0 at the end of it or you finish third, what would you rather do? Well, you'd probably rather finish third or second or first. And the best way to do that is to take your chances and recognize that if it's not my day, it's not my day. It's going to happen more often than not. But the days that you are right, you're going to score out.
That's the way that it's done. Let's look at a couple more of these older comments before we do the leaderboard check. Here's Mike again talking about slump advice. Likes to look up winning tickets he had, go back and watch those races. He says, sounds a bit silly, but hey, I'll tell you what, if it's gonna get you seeing the ball well again, if it's gonna get those positive thoughts going, I want you. Look, we all know we're not invincible, right? But when you're making a bet, I want you to, as much as possible, have a positive outlook about it and know it's not so much about I'm definitely gonna win. That's just unrealistic. But I want you to be able to go up there and say, this bet is doing what I need it to do. And that might mean, hey, I know where my edge is when I'm making it. Or maybe it's, if you're somebody like I am this summer at Saratoga, I'm not focused on. I mean, I've been fortunate to make some money, but I'm not here to, I'm here to have fun, right? If I can go up and make a bet and say, okay, this is a responsible bet where I'm not getting too much of the worst of it, like that's good enough. Like this is a good bet for what I'm doing today. And if I'm stepping out, I need to know I have an edge here. And you got to be. I want you coming at it from a place of positivity. And I think what Mike described is that's going to help get you in that positive mental state when it comes time to put your hand in your pocket or your fingers on the keyboard. That's a win. And when you lose that, I mean, you said it before, scared money never wins. I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. And you've got to hit the pause button or come up with a safe, easy, responsible way of betting, like contests over on horseplayers.com and horsetourneys.com when your mind is in that state. Because otherwise, you're running the risk of taking an activity that can be the absolute best and turning it into the worst. And racing doesn't deserve that, neither do you.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I'm guilty, and I'm not even going to say guilty. I do it with pride. I'll go back, and especially if there's a race or a horse with something coming up, let's just say, the Whitney, as an example, and there's a horse I like in there that, I'm not really seeing many people talk about, or for whatever reason, maybe is a little bit slow on figs. I'll go back and start looking at prior results that I had that kind of feeling leading into that race, and then watch it. And when it plays out, you kind of relive that feeling of validation of, no, you know what? Just because everybody else doesn't see it doesn't mean that's not going to happen. And look, there are many more instances that you can find that you had that feeling and you look up and you watch the replay and the horse is still running. But the idea is to use those positive sort of, affirmations, that idea of, oh, you know what you're doing. You know how you got here, and you know what you see for whatever it may be, a certain pattern or whatever the case is. You think back to the way it was you're feeling leading into whatever that other score was, and you pull up that replay and you watch it. Yeah, I've done that more than once. I do that quite frequently, to be honest with you.
Awesome.
Just because you go through, and I think it's just that you got to have the positive mindset. If you don't have a positive mindset, I think you're going into it already sort of behind the eight ball.
Taking a knife to a gunfight, as it were.
Yeah.
Joe Indiveri wants to know, where's Javier today? I don't know. Does somebody out there in the comments know where Javier is today? If somebody has info on that, we'd love to hear it. Tom says, my son on the way out the door hears the audio of Triple H. It says, is that the hat guy and the TV guy? That reminds me of a story I heard recently. Matt Vagvolgi, who's in the Money family, valued contributor to In the Money Plus, helped give out a bunch of horses that factored in the pick six last Sunday at Saratoga. Most recently was telling a story about him and his dad sitting around drinking whiskey, and he was requesting a particular whiskey, and he said he wanted the hat and the hair whiskey. So I'm the hat guy, you're the TV guy, JK is the hair guy. Does it sound about right?
You're not the hair guy and he's not the hat guy? I didn't know that. That's funny, though. I like that.
He could arm wrestle you maybe for the TV guy pretty soon, Matt. But no, you've still.
Look, I would gladly give up that moniker. I don't need that. I'm the guy from New England. That's all. That's it.
Fantastic stuff. We'll give a shout out to my coach, staying alive with the big favorite there. Lone Rock claimed again by Mott after going to Diodoro and went to claim again for 40K. I mean, we've seen this before with Bill Mott and whatever the reason is, his program, as opposed to some trainers who are, maybe more aggressive with some of the things that they'll do with horses. But it's not. We've seen horses moved up off of Bill Mott. And I don't think to me, it doesn't impugn his ability as a trainer. He's an all-time great. He's one of my all-time favorites and one of the first people I'd be happy to put a horse with. But we have seen, just something to note. It's not like, oh, this trainer who's more active in the claiming game took one off Mott, they're not going to move him up. Like, maybe they will. We have seen, Linda Rice do it, and we've seen it there as well.
Yeah, and you wonder. I mean, I'm going through. I have his lifetime PPs up. He was a horse that was more or less a router for the majority of his career, and then they tried to shorten him up a little bit for a couple of spots back and forth. Diodoro dipped back in and grabbed him at the end of November last year. And they brought him back in a mile and a 16th race that he won. And I do wonder, then they stretched him out to that mile and a half, and he ran so well against Carlos L. Carlos L is a horse co-owned by Eddie Olczyk. And that was far and away, from a speed figure standpoint, the best race he had ever run. And then you go back and you run him in another mile and a half race, and he backs it up and he wins by more than 6. And here we are now. He's ripped off 5 consecutive mile and a half to mile and 3/4 races. Maybe this is just what the horse has wanted his entire career. And it's always funny when that sort of thing happens, that just for whatever reason, they've run well enough doing other things, but that's not actually their bread and butter. They're actually better off doing something, entirely different.
We have seen that time and time again. Had a question from MVP if Moreno's race is one that you will occasionally pull.
No, to be honest with you, that's one of I'll probably go back and watch it after we wrap up here. I haven't watched that one in quite some time, but I do think back to that, because that was when I was still pretty early on with NBC, and that felt very good to come out on top with that one. And we went into it, and Edzo was the one doing the interviewing, and he goes, all right, he's going to go to the front. What are you looking for fractions? And I said, and I believe I said 10-3 or 10-4 for 3/4. And I think it was right on the nose, 10-3. And he ended up scooting away. So it's always good. And those are the sort of things you need, though. I think that goes a long way. You go back and go, no, look, he was 15-1 or whatever he was, or 10-1. I was right. I knew that was going to happen, and it happened. And you need that, especially when you're going bad, because you need those things to remind yourself that, no, it's not always like this. You're not always, expecting a fastball and you get some sort of an off-speed pitch. It doesn't always happen like that. If you think a fastball is coming, there are those times that you're sitting dead red and you put it out of the park. So I think you do need those momentary kind of pick-me-ups.
Lahara checks in, sending love from West Seattle. We love to hear it. Thank you for joining us. My coach pops back in with a case or at least a tout on the number 4 in the last race at Saratoga, 18-1. So you've got my attention there, Coach. We might as well take this opportunity, Matt, to chat about this race for a minute. We got tons of time, but we can do the handicapping piece of it and then maybe come back to it for a little bit of betting specifics as we get a little bit closer. What did you come up with in this spot? I felt that the 5, and I don't know the price, but the 5 Looking to Fly was a bit of a standout on some of the figure stuff I was looking at. 9-2 looks okay.
Yeah, 9-2. You're holding right there at the morning line. I have to go and I want to pull up the replay on the fly here between the 5 Looking to Fly, who was one of the 3 that I was interested in, the 9 Escape with Friends, who was also coming out of that common race. Neither of them had much pace to run into, but they both came storming home at the end of the race. And the other horse that I thought there was just a little bit of a curious piece was the 4. Kiloni Rose. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation. The thing that I was most interested in, and I'm going through and trying to keep an eye on the pedigree, Dylan Davis doesn't typically ride for Rob Atras, but when he does, they click off at a pretty good number. And you can go another step with first-time starters. Davis has ridden for Atras on 2 occasions. They were both winners, and the ROI is $15.75. So they were both double-digit kind of horses that just kind of got lost in the shuffle. So that was, and I would be lying if I said there wasn't one other horse that kind of caught my eye, and there was a positive number for the 8 Out of Sight. For Phil Gleaves, first time going over to the turf. Past 4 years, first time turf. The win rate is not huge, but it's pretty solid. 3 for 14 with an 1892 ROI. So you've got massive ROIs for a couple of these horses that are look. One of them is 20-1, and the other one's 18-1. To be honest with you, I may just play those and say if one of them connects, I'll be a happy camper, and if they don't, they were a price for a reason.
Yeah, that's fine. You can't be right that often at that price point. You don't need all that many reasons to like one at that price point. Let's do a quick leaderboard check. Todd Von Dree is in first right now at 70-60. Has the 9 in this race. Sean O'Malley in second, 68-60. Michael Domaville, who's been active in the comments, 63-90. With his technical second entry. He's also down in 6th with 55-40. Let's see which runners he played. So he's got the 9 on one and the 10 on another. Is that right? The 10 and then the 9. So the one with the 9, not going to be able to win the day with that. But this contest, first and second is the exact same prize. And then top 10 is tiered in terms of tour points, and then top 15 get to advance. John Twomey in 4th place, Michael Robinson 5th. We already told you about that second Michael Domaville entry. Dave Nichols, who's a big supporter of Thoroughbred Aftercare charities, including the TRF and the TAA. He's in 7th. Ray DiCarlo, Bill Chenvert, a very active contest player. Trish Smith from the comments in 10th. So that's not a bad little spot to be. Trish has my 5 in this spot. Michael Mutnansky.
So no, my buddy. So this is my buddy from WEEI in Boston, and he sent me a text. He sent me a text before the day, and he goes, "When my name is up on the leaderboard, make sure the name is pronounced correctly." So
did I butcher it?
Well, Mutnansky.
Okay, I said Moot.
We call him Mutt, but if he's watching, he's going to get a kick out of that.
I'm so mad at myself because I know the name too, so I should have got that. Tom Rapps, Dennis Madsen, Matt Miller in 14th and 15th right now in the money of his own. Drew Coatney at 41.70, not tour eligible, but he is eligible to get through this as a qualifier. So if he scores out with this 3, I don't know if it'll be enough to get him into the top 10. We'll have to see how it all shakes out. But I don't know what our rules say. I guess the tour points would just go to the next guy or gal in the standings. But there you have it. Lots of familiar names up there. hit us up. We got 8 minutes left. Definitely some time to talk about whatever you want as the show progresses here into the home stretch. Horses getting ready to head out to the back, getting out to the track rather in Saratoga. We got a lovely scene here at the Brentwood in Saratoga. Great bunch of tables full out on the patio. People enjoying their cocktails on a beautiful summer night. Just incredibly pleasant scenes here. And I love that idea, Matt, of trying to do the show here together live potentially in a couple of weeks' time. I think there's a way we might be able to set it up. We'll have to figure out the audio piece of it is the trickiest piece, but we'll talk to producers AJ and Craig. They're sharp guys. Maybe we can figure out how to do it.
I feel like if we're both going to be in the same town, we might as well, try to make something work on that point. You brought up that we've got a little bit of time left. Are you open to talking about the test real quick?
Yeah, I think we should quickly touch on these grade ones. Hopefully, then have a couple of questions from the audience, and then we'll send this thing home with the last race, do a final leaderboard update, and get out of here. What is your view, Matt Bernier, on this year's test?
I think it's a really, really good race. There's only 8 fillies that are going to go the 7/8s, but between search results and the highly thought of and much ballyhooed Always Karina, you can make a case for either of them. I don't know. Always Karina, she just needs to prove to me that she's actually this good. She got defeated by Zagil, who ended up winning the Mother Goose at Belmont at 1,000,000 to 1, and it's still one when I look at the form. I don't know where it came from. The horse that I was most interested in, I think I'm going to get the price that I want, and running style-wise, at the 7/8 or 6.5 furlong configuration on the main track at Saratoga, it's not as paramount that you need to be on the lead or close to it as it is at 6 furlongs and shorter. I think Super Sensational. I thought she was really good winning the victory ride. There was no pace that day, but that move she made on the turn at Belmont Park, that to me indicated that she's a legitimate runner. And you can clearly tell that Mark Cassidy and company have always thought she's legit because she's done nothing but run in stakes races her entire career other than her maiden. Her career debut. I thought she was awesome in that spot at Belmont on July 10th. I think I'm going to get the price I want. I made her 5-1. I'm looking forward to betting Super Sensational, acknowledging that search results is really good. Always Karina, obligatory. I know a lot of people are very high on, but for me, I think Super Sensational is worth a bet.
I mean, you're making a good case. 8-1 currently in the international betting. I'm interested in Bella Sophia at 8-1. Definitely going to be tested for class, but on figures, she is right there with the best of these. And I like the tactical speed, and I like the draw, giving Luis Saez options potentially to try to sit off and stalk and pounce, or maybe just go on with it and try to take the race by the scruff of the neck from the outside if others are content to grab and goof around. I love search results. She's so cool. Big run, absolutely no surprise based on her body of work. But 5-2 on her versus 8-1 on Bella Sophia makes it a pretty easy call for me. I think you make an interesting case on Super Sensational. I definitely get obligatory at 9-2. Felt like that was a pretty impressive run last time, potentially a little bit against the flow. Really like the opportunity for her to come running late for a little piece, but all about Bella Sophia for me. So a couple of 8-1 shots in the international betting for Matt and I in this year's test.
Yeah, let's try to grab one of those at the very least. And then this is where I'm going to lean on you, and you can tell me if I'm going a little overboard here. The Saratoga Derby, I go through this field, and no, the price isn't anything brilliant. But isn't Cadillac just better than these?
I feel like you can make a couple of different cases. I mean, I'll tell you this. You don't have I think you've got a horse that you can take on, I think, in Bolshoi Ballet. Because I just wasn't impressive on the clock or visually last time. So now you've got these two other opportunities to beat him. So I do prefer Cadillac to him. But State of Rest is very interesting as well in this spot. I was just texting with Kevin Blake, my buddy from over at the Races website, who helps out with the racing management side with the Joseph O'Brien stable, and the vibes seem good around the horse. feels that he has to move up off of that last run at the Curragh, second start of the year. This looks like breeding that should do fine under USA conditions. I'm interested in him. I'm a little interested in Secret Protector coming off that run. The Hampton Court, a serious race that was run on USA style ground. So I think I want a Euro that isn't Bolshoi. That's the way I'm looking at this race.
Okay. Yeah. And to be fair, the two that I was initially looking at, well, Cadillac to me just kind of stuck out because I remember his 2-year-old form, and then going back and watching that ARM holding stakes there. I get it. It may not have been the most brilliant finish you've ever seen, but first start off such a lengthy layoff at that distance against older horses, good older horses. And I know there were some 3-year-olds in there as well, but I just thought it was a really gutsy performance. And then to come over here, to your point, Bolshoi Ballet, I won't be surprised if he runs well, but I just don't think he's a superstar, put it that way. Secret Protector, my only thing that I wasn't sure about, you would know more about this than I thought that Hampton Court, I thought that was a pretty legitimate pace, and he came from last, basically. And I just thought his best stride was at the end of the run, so the distance is going to be right up his alley. But I was just afraid that he ended up having the best of the run and still couldn't quite get it done. Granted, that winner apparently may be very, very good.
Yeah, it's good form, but he was probably with the flow that day. I liked acting over that ground. I love the win in Maidan too. With I always like to see the left-handed form and the firm form. More of a price type of a play. I mean, I would probably give a little bit preference to State of Rest, who I think just is unexposed type who was thought enough of to run in Group 1 company and take a lot of money as a 2-year-old. And hearing that he's trained on, maybe that narrative is influencing me a little bit too much, but 10-1 on the morning line. Let's take a quick peek at the international betting on this. Bolshoi 6-4, Dujour 11-2, Cadillac 6s, State of Rest 9, Secret Protector 10. I mean, my real opinion is just to be against Bolshoi, I think. And if he kicks sand in my face, he kicks sand in my face. And I'll probably just play the other Euros in various combinations. That might be my thought.
I guess, the American contingent, I don't know that I love any of them. The unknown in here, granted, it's supposed to be a stepping stone to the Travers. King Fury, I guess, is a little intriguing just because who knows what he can do. I mean, you see Curlin's act on grass. I'm not worried about that. Taurus, I don't believe she ever was on the grass, but she was a sprinter. She was more of a 7 to a 1-turn miler. We have a late scratch in the finale. The 2.
Okay.
25-1. So from a gambling standpoint, won't change much. But some of you in the contest, if you had this horse, unfortunately, you're going to be scratched into your backup. Yeah, I guess I just thought King Fury was the only one of the domestic horses that, simply because I don't know what to expect from him. Everybody else, I'm really not that thrilled with.
Yeah, it's not crazy. We've talked many times about how dirt horses can have, for lack of a better description, a little bit of a toughness advantage. I mean, just I think due to the attritional nature of dirt racing, and when you can race on dirt and you're capable of running on grass genetically, you typically show a good account of yourself. And I mean, I don't know much about. I take a quick look. I hadn't looked yet at the genetic strength rating on Equinedge for King Fury in the spot, but certainly on the sire side, I see it. Comes out a little light on GSR compared to some of the competitors in here, but it's not a massive. Actually, no, it is a pretty big drop down from the dirt GSRs to the turf one. I'm going to probably let King Fury beat me in this spot. I'm going to probably let Bolshoi beat me and play around with the others and see what other intel we can gather. Hopefully, Stephen Bonnick will be doing a full write-up of the European shippers, as he often does on Saturdays over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com. Maybe he'll see some things that I haven't been able to pick up on yet. But Cadillac is definitely on the short list, and probably the most likely of the non-Bolshoi runners, like technically speaking. But I wonder if at the prices there might not be yet another way to go in this spot, as we've got the 8 now acting up at the gate.
I did think one of the more interesting things of this race, and we have seen the reluctance of the New York Colony, the riders, to go to the front in these turf races. Timeform US has King Fury, who I think we all have all thought of as a mid-pack to deep closer even on dirt. They have him on the lead, which if that ends up playing out, that all of a sudden becomes a very intriguing situation because he's going to stay. I'm not worried about that part of it. It's a matter of, can he handle the surface? If he winds up in that sort of frontish flight and he's coming out of say what you will about the Ohio Derby, Masquerade didn't disgrace himself in his first try against big league company in the Jim Dandy. And keep me in mind, granted, he had the run of the race up the wood. I mean, he almost defeated Essential Quality, although he didn't necessarily run the best race. Point being, coming out of a pretty solid race right now.
Yeah, we're going to see how it plays out in the Saratoga Derby, Grade 1 action on that Saturday Belmont card. It's a loaded card. Can't wait to be playing along with them on Saturday. All right, we're off in the finale, Matt. What kind of trips are we getting here? I feel like the 5 is in a pretty good spot. Are you happy enough with where you are?
Yeah, I played little bits on the 4 and the 8. The 4 is saving ground down at the back, and the 8 is just outside of your 5 right now. So trip-wise right now, I don't see anything to really be too upset about, other than the pace is very, very moderate.
Yeah, we didn't talk too much about Mondoose, who I did in some of my picks, I did include as a backup on the pace angle. But 5-2 feels too short to me for a runner who I thought was maybe facing a little bit more difficult of a group than the last day. And, we're not, even though the turf is drying out at Saratoga, I don't think it's, hasn't exactly been a picnic for speed types. I definitely prefer the 5 and the 9 to the 3 in this spot. And the 3 right now being hounded by a 41 to 1 shot. Maybe that'll set things up, because the 9 makes the move on the outside, and Look at the Fly has to be patient down on the inside, but hopefully we'll find either a seam or have an opportunity to go up the wood. Stymied for run right now, looking for that split, but appears to have some finish.
I was going to say this is going to be a bit of a scramble at the end. I'm hopeful the 8 can find something at the end, just kind of going up and down. But the 5, I think you've got this one, no?
I would hope so. I mean, Mondoose actually ran a really nice race, repelling all that speed, but the figures were right on this one, as the 5 runs out an easy winner in the end in the Saratoga Nightcap at a very pleasing price. Yeah. I wish I had done a little bit more there.
Nice job.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah.
We had winners. We gave out some winners today.
Yeah, we bookended it with a couple of 7-2 shots.
Yeah, we'll take that. We'll absolutely take that. And no, for the purposes, again, for me, looking back at Lone Rock in the previous race, and a big pick, that's a horse I'm going to want to have. It was, we happened to be using that double example, and that was really the reason to oppose. There was no real reason to oppose that horse other than price. And, I try not to just knee jerk be against horses who are going to be short. It's just, you got to explain. There's context. There's ways that those horses can be used, and there's places where they should probably be avoided. So that's something to consider. Tom Espinoza, also a Cadillac fan, points out about the horse having form in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile that wasn't too bad. What was he, 4th or something in that race?
Yeah, I believe he ended up 4th, and he made a bit of an early move that day as well. So we'll find out, and that's why I needed to talk to you. Am I going a little overboard here, saying he's way the horse to beat? You've at least given me reason to go back and take another deeper look at State of Rest. I feel pretty confident in my secret protector idea, and that not that he can't win this race, but if the pace is going to be on the moderate side, I thought he had a pretty good go of it in that most recent run. And there is something about, we talked about it with some of these other races that we've had in the contest. There's something about, for both Cadillac and State of Rest, taking on older horses in their most recent starts. And now they're going back into 3-year-old restricted company. I think there is something to be said about that. And you're going from Europe to the United States. You, in a way, for both of those horses, you get kind of 2 pieces of class relief, and they're both making their second starts of the year. So I think there's plenty of reason to like those.
It's both extremely appealing. And you throw in that idea, as much as we always hammer on about turf form, shipping west and all that. It just, I don't have any stats on this, but it just feels like the advantage that Euro turf horses have is only going to be made that much greater by the fact that the home team isn't running on Lasix at this point.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see some dominance throughout the rest of the year in these races. So it wouldn't surprise me if Team USA doesn't get anything in this year's Saratoga Derby.
I was earlier, just for ha-has, I was going through and looking at some prices for the Breeders' Cup. And the one that stuck out to me, there were actually two. And maybe you've got some friends over in Europe you may need to drop a line to.
Some of them may be watching.
Jackie's Warrior was 8-1 for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. If things continue, I'm all in now. I wasn't fully, all in as a believer. I thought that was a spectacular performance, and he just continues to do that time and time again. If he keeps going that way, I don't want to say he'll be guaranteed the favorite, because that allowance race, we'll be curious to see where those horses come back from, Bo Liam and Witzel. But 8-1 sounds very appealing. And then 8-1 on domestic spending for the turf. Granted, you've got Tarnawa and you've got a couple other horses that the prices anyway were shorter, but 8-1 day of on domestic spending. I don't know if you're going to find that. No,
that sounds like it could be good. It feels like, look into the bricks and mortar type market. You might, what was bricks and mortar in the end? 4, 7-2.
Yeah, it might have even been less than that. I can pull it up on the fly.
Yeah. I mean, now granted, Tarnawa and it's a lot of it's going to depend on who shows up from Team World in the Breeders' Cup. But it's so exciting. I love the idea of looking ahead to these races. I love that, you can now see a path to maybe where we're going to be able to have some fixed odds, anti-post betting on an event like the Breeders' Cup within the next couple of years. I think it makes it so much fun to enjoy and gives us a lot of opportunities to create great, fun content. Joe Solito pointing out that Saez gets 3 today. He's been,
well, do you know what Bricks was?
I mean, my guess was 4-1, 7-2.
He was even money.
I guess it wasn't the strongest crop of Euros, right? It was the ill-fated Anthony Van Dyke.
Yep.
There was that other O'Brien that was that I actually kind of liked. It was 40-1, but there wasn't, Tarnawa or an Abel or. That's amazing though. How funny how quickly the memory fades. And I was against Bricks because remember there was that whole thing. We thought he was a 10 furlong horse and either cut back or go far, and it was just there was just too much uncertainty at a short price for me. And then we'll never know. I did a Twitter poll that I think we had 500 responses, 250 of if Anthony Van Dyke gets there without being stopped. That big grinding looping run he was making. That's who I needed in the spot. I was stubborn and should have probably done more with bricks and mortar, but he was just too short of a price for me. And that's sometimes you just gotta take those on the chin. And that's what happened to me there. Do you remember who you bet in that race?
Yeah. Old Persian, who's still running. Old Persian was actually the second choice at 7-2.
Yeah. I mean, he had that good form from Canada, right? Yep. I was worried he was one. I mean, I guess he was a 1.5 mile horse. For some reason, I didn't like how he stacked up in there. I mean, it did not like him, but it just at the price, I didn't get drawn in. Do we have a final leaderboard, AJ? Once that goes official, we can give that a holler and plan on getting out of here. This is a marathon edition of the show. It's kind of fun doing it a little bit longer. There's tons to talk about. So, okay, we have a little bit of a turn up on the leaderboard with John Twomey getting the win, 72-70. He will be joined in our finals by Todd Van Dree, who was up there for a long time. That's a deserving spot at 70-60. Sean O'Malley, Ray DiCarlo, Michael Domable, Trish Smith. Congrats, Trish. I think you're still watching. Congrats, Michael. I think you're still watching. Dave Nichols, Matt Miller from Chicago there, Michael Robinson. Michael Domable gets the double, so he gets 50 tour points for the 5th, and then another 10 for the 10th. Not bad at all. Bill Chenvert, Mike Mutnansky. How was that? Was that better?
He just texted me. He goes, "Do I qualify for Saturday finishing 12th?" I said, "Yes."
Does.
You're in Saturday. You're in Saturday. You don't get any points, but you're in Saturday.
He does, no tour points, but in Saturday. Bill Chenvert, Larry Barkin, Tom Rapson. Oh, look who for the second time this year ends up being our bubble boy, It's Drew Coatney coming home 16th. Drew, I'm sorry, but
I'm sorry, Drew. I don't mean to laugh.
That's yeah, I know we're terrible friends.
David Browning. I mean, he's on every leaderboard. The first page.
And he must have gone flying. I didn't see him all day, and then he's there at the end. Yeah, he picks up points in that last race. David Browning, for those who don't know, he's our leader in the clubhouse, as it were. He's our number one man. He's in pole position to get one of those two $10,000 Breeders' Cup betting challenge seats. All right, Matt, I've got a dinner to cook. People headed over to the house. We got to rock and roll, but not before we do some thank yous. And we start with you, my man, the rock of these shows. So great getting a chance to work with you. Can't wait to hang out with you soon. We're going to thank producer Craig in absentia, producer AJ, Arthur Wash in reality for pushing all the right buttons and helping us out. Got to thank our friends at the Breeders' Cup, Haley Amos. I understand she's getting to Saratoga. I think we're going to get to see her at the Gumbo event next week. That's going to be an absolute ton of fun. Justin McDonald over there as well, our friends and partners at the Breeders' Cup and HorsePlayers.com. We appreciate you. But most of all, we appreciate all of you, the viewers, especially those of you making comments. We want more people to join us live and really create a fun community atmosphere on these shows. That's going to do it. This show's been a co-production of the Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media. I remember the company name there. Our business manager is Drew Coatney, the aforementioned Bubble Boy. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatow. May you win all your photos.